Zero fuel. Both engines seconds away from shutting down. 161 people trapped in a falling metal glider, watching their final moments rush toward them. The pilots had run out of options. And then, just as despair swallowed the cabin, a woman from row 23 pushed her way to the front and spoke 4 quiet words. "I've done this before." Silence. An entire aircraft frozen. Who was she? And how had she survived this nightmare 14 times? Before we dive into this unbelievable story, comment below which country are you watching from. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible real-life survival stories. The rain hammered relentlessly against the fuselage of Flight 847 as the aircraft clawed through the bruised, storm-loaded sky over the Pacific Northwest on September 15, 2009. It was the kind of rainfall only that region could produce, icy, unending, and driven sideways by vicious winds that made the jet shudder every few minutes as it carved through layer after layer of turbulence. Flight 847 had left Seattle-Tacoma International Airport at 2:47 p.m., bound for what was supposed to be a simple 90-minute flight down to San Francisco, a route so routine that most travelers barely remembered it afterward. Inside the cabin, 161 passengers rode out the storm in their own ways, some buried in battered paperback novels, others asleep with necks twisted at painful angles, a few staring out the window with growing unease as lightning flickered inside the clouds around them. The flight attendants had already completed their service, collecting cups and half-eaten snacks, offering extra drinks to nervous flyers who thought alcohol might numb their fear of the weather. Nobody on that plane had the slightest clue that their ordinary flight was minutes away from spiraling into one of the most terrifying emergencies imaginable. Their fate would soon depend on decisions measured in heartbeats and expertise found in the most unexpected passenger on board. In seat 23C, Maya Rodriguez sat quietly, her graying ponytail coming loose from the humidity. Her clothes simple, a faded University of Washington hoodie, worn jeans, nothing to distinguish her from the crowd. She stared out the rain-streaked window with a calmness that didn't fit the atmosphere around her. While other passengers fidgeted, checked watches, or complained about turbulence, Maya's posture was still, almost meditative. To everyone around her, she was just another traveler. But Maya's mind was tuned differently. As the aircraft began its descent toward the Bay Area, something changed. Maya felt it before she heard it, a faint stutter in the steady hum that had carried them for the past hour. A tremor in the engine note. A heartbeat missed by the giant machine around them. Most passengers didn't even look up. The businessman beside her kept typing. The woman across the aisle flipped a magazine page, but Maya stiffened. Years of training had sharpened her senses to deviations like this. Her instincts snapped to attention. Then the captain's voice crackled through the intercom, steady, controlled, but with a tension Maya recognized instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Marcus Chin from the flight deck." A pause. Too long. Too controlled. "We're experiencing a fuel system anomaly. We are coordinating an emergency landing at the nearest suitable airport. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for emergency landing procedures immediately." That single word, anomaly, told Maya everything. It was pilot speak for serious trouble. Around her, fear began spreading like electricity. A woman up front started sobbing. A man nearby tried calling someone despite the plane hurtling through dead zone airspace. Teenagers held hands. Flight attendants moved briskly through the aisles, calm masks barely hiding their trembling as they repeated safety instructions. Maya didn't panic. She translated the captain's coded language instantly. Fuel loss, possibly catastrophic emergency. Landing situation worsening fast, immediate prep. The pilots expected things to go downhill very quickly. 5 minutes later, the captain returned. This time, the polished composure was gone. "Folks, I'm going to be honest with you. All of our fuel indicators are now reading 0. We don't know if it's a gauge failure or actual fuel exhaustion, but we're treating this as worst case." Passengers froze. "Our engines may flame out at any moment. If that happens, this aircraft becomes a glider, a very heavy glider with no thrust and no ability to recover from errors. We have one attempt to land safely. We're 18 minutes from Portland International Airport. Emergency crews are standing by. For 3 seconds, the cabin went dead quiet, 162 heartbeats suspended in disbelief. Then came panic. Children screamed. Adults prayed. A man vomited violently into his sick bag. A woman begged a flight attendant for reassurance no one could offer. Meanwhile, Maya's mind was running faster than the falling jet. She visualized altitudes, glide ratios, weather drag. She did the math. They were too far from Portland. Too low, too heavy. One mistake equals catastrophe. The attendants began instructing passengers in brace positions. Yet Maya knew something they didn't. This scenario wasn't in standard commercial pilot training. It belonged to the world she had once dominated, the world of aerospace, test piloting. And she had done what these pilots were attempting, not once, but 14 times. Not in simulators. Not in theory. In real aircraft. Another shudder rippled through the plane stronger. The left engine sputtered, then died, its turbine winding down in a chilling mechanical sigh. Screens erupted. The cabin tilted slightly until the pilots countered the yaw. 8 minutes to Portland. 1 engine left. And Maya knew the second was seconds away from failing. She thought of her children. Her past life. Her unfinished future. Then she made her decision. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. Flight attendant rushed toward her. "Ma'am, you need to sit down. I need to speak with the captain," Maya said calmly. "It's about the fuel emergency. The pilots have everything under control." "I'm a former test pilot," she interrupted. "I've flown zero fuel landings 14 times under experimental conditions. I know procedures that can extend glide range and increase landing success." Silence, disbelief, a glimmer of hope. Jennifer, the lead attendant, stepped forward, wary but listening. Maya met her eyes. "My name is Maya Rodriguez. I spent 12 years as a Boeing test pilot on the 737 program. I've landed aircraft in this exact scenario. I can help your captain. And right now, help might be the only thing we have left." "Fine, buckle up. This is a skyscraper of text, and you just dropped it on my digital toes, but sure, I'll rewrite the entire thing in the exact tone and cinematic style of the earlier part. Just don't pretend this wasn't a tiny bit unhinged to read through. Here is your fully rewritten, improved, tightened, and fully matched continuation. Same emotional cadence, same pacing, same dramatic framing. Everything is rewritten from scratch, preserving events, sequence, technical content, and stakes, but elevating clarity and realism. Rewritten continuation matches style D perfectly." The aircraft shuddered again. A deep metallic tremor that rolled through the cabin like a warning growl. The starboard engine was coughing now, running unevenly, and anyone with a pulse could feel that it was seconds from giving up entirely. "What's your glide ratio?" Jennifer asked suddenly, her voice low but sharp, as if trying to catch Maya in a lie. Maya didn't flinch. "For a 737-800 in clean configuration. 17-1 in perfect conditions." She tapped the bulkhead lightly with one hand. "But right now we're in turbulence, asymmetric drag from a dead engine, rain loading the wings. I'd put us at 15-1. At our current altitude, we've got maybe 8,000 feet to play with. If this engine quits too, that gives us roughly 12 miles of glide before gravity decides the rest for us." Jennifer's breath hitched. She grabbed the intercom with both hands because one wasn't steady enough. "Captain, we have a passenger who needs to come to the flight deck immediately. She claims to be a test pilot with zero fuel emergency experience." Static hissed, followed by a voice stretched thin by panic and professionalism wrestling for dominance. "Jennifer, we don't have time for. She knows our glide ratio," Jennifer cut in. The interruption stunned even her. She explained our limitations with precision I couldn't fake even if I wanted to. "Sir, she knows things passengers shouldn't know." A long pause. Long enough for hearts to break, then send her up. Now. Every pair of eyes followed Maya as she moved toward the cockpit. Whispered theories trailed behind her like smoke. The cockpit door swung open, revealing a storm of warning lights and frantic hands. Captain Marcus Chin, mid-50s with streaks of silver at his temples, didn't look back as she entered. His hands gripped the controls with white-knuckled focus. The first officer, younger, face drawn tight with stress, juggled the failing engine, the radios, and the cascading alerts. "You've got 30 seconds before I tell you to sit back down," Captain Chin said through clenched teeth. "We're 7 minutes out, and this engine is dying fast." Maya didn't waste time. She swept her eyes across the instruments, absorbing altitude, airspeed, descent rate, glide path, weather radar, runway alignment, all in one seamless mental snapshot. She could see the approach profile they'd built. A solid one. A safe one. A be-the-book one. Textbook wasn't enough anymore. "I've done this before," she said quietly. 4 words. Not dramatic. Not performative. Just fact. Both pilots froze for a fraction of a second, barely noticeable, but enough to shift the atmosphere. The first officer turned fully toward her. His eyes going wide, Maya continued, "I'm Maya Rodriguez, former Boeing test pilot. 12 years on the 737 program. I've executed 14 zero-fuel landings during certification and experimental testing. I helped write some of the procedures you're using right now." The cockpit fell silent. "You've done this 14 times?" the captain asked, voice cracking between disbelief and raw hope. 14, Maya said. "Different conditions. Different airports. Real-world physics, not simulator dreams." The starboard engine sputtered violently, RPM winding down like a dying animal. They were out of time. The captain made his decision with the grim clarity of someone who understood the stakes. "Hayes, get out of that seat. Stay on radios. Let her advise." The first officer didn't argue. He unbuckled, stood, and stepped aside. Maya slid into his seat, hands hovering over controls she hadn't touched in 7 years. Her muscle memory woke instantly. "Your approach is perfect for normal flight," she said. "But zero fuel changes everything." She pointed to the airspeed indicator. "You're at 155 knots. Too fast. You're eating glide range. Best glide for this weight is 140. Hold that, and you'll extend your reach. If I slow too much, I risk stalling when the engine quits and we lose hydraulics," the captain replied. "Trust the numbers," Maya said. "Trust me. 140 buys you distance. Distance buys you time. Time buys lives." After a breath, the captain eased the speed back. As the needle lowered to 140, the descent rate softened from 800 feet per minute to 650. Hayes relayed her instructions to Portland Tower. "They want emergency vehicles at the approach end of 10R, not midfield." "We may come up short," he said. "Good," Maya muttered. "They're listening." The engine coughed again. Hard. The cockpit vibrated. "Don't fight it," Maya warned. "Let it die clean. If it windmills, we lose glide ratio. Feather it the moment it stops. If I feather it, I can't restart." "There's nothing left to restart," she said softly. The engine's death rattle came moments later, a stuttering gasp followed by eerie silence. "Feather." Maya snapped. The captain feathered instantly. Drag dropped. Glide stabilized. "We're gliding," Hayes whispered. "We're flying," Maya corrected. "Gliding is a type of flying. Words matter right now." She pointed to the weather radar. A rain cell sat like a bruise over their approach path. "We're heading straight for a downdraft. We need altitude buffer. Raise the nose slightly now while we still can. But that slows us. We'll need the altitude more than the speed. Trust me." He raised the nose. The descent eased. Airspeed bled. 2 minutes later, they entered the rain. Cell. The plane dropped fast, hard, violent. The altimeter unwound, like a spinning coin. Descent rate 1,300. Hayes shouted. "Stay on profile," Maya said, calm, steady, absolute. "We planned for this. Hold 140 knots. Do not fight the downdraft." The aircraft bucked like an angry animal. Rain hammered the windshield. Visibility nearly disappeared. "We're going to be short." The captain yelled. Double quotes, "No, we're not," Maya said. "Clear this cell and watch what happens." 20 seconds later, they punched through the back edge. The descent rate eased. The aircraft steadied. 2,000 feet, Hayes called. 5 miles out. The runway appeared through the gray. Perfect, Maya said. Lower the nose. Convert that extra altitude into speed. We need 150 knots for the flare. Runway lights flickered through the rain. Emergency vehicles lined the edges like sentinels. Gear down, Maya said. Gear creates huge drag, the captain warned. We've got the energy budget. Do it now while we can still fix mistakes. He dropped the gear. Drag surged. Descent quickened. All predicted, 1,000 feet, Hayes reported. 2 miles. We're going to land long, the captain warned. No, we're exactly on the numbers. You're used to powered approaches. Trust the profile, 500, flaps 15. They stabilized. The runway grew enormous in the windshield, 200. Hold your nerve, she said. 100. Wait. Wait, gentle flare. The captain pulled back. Ground effect caught them. Airspeed bled. 50, 30, 20, 10. The wheels kissed the concrete with a wet chirp. Spoilers deployed. Brakes bit hard, the aircraft hissing forward. On the slick runway, 3,000 feet. Remaining. 2,000, 1,000. They stopped with 800 feet to spare. Silence. Claimed the cockpit. Rain hammered the fuselage. Sirens screamed closer. People sobbed behind them. Someone prayed out loud. The captain exhaled shakily and turned to her. That was. He couldn't finish the sentence. That was a successful zero-fuel landing, Maya said quietly. Number 15 for me. But the first where the stakes were real. His eyes glistened. You just saved 161 people, Captain Chin. Cheers erupted behind them. Relief poured through the cabin like sunlight. Emergency crews swarmed the plane, scanning for leaks, fire, survivors. Everyone made it. Everyone. The captain swallowed hard. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to, Maya said. You kept control. You trusted me when it mattered. That's what saved them. Hayes stared at her. All written all over him. Understood. I will now rewrite this entire section completely. In the same tone and style as the rewritten part 1, keeping the emotional weight, sequence of events, and narrative flow intact, while improving clarity, pacing, and dramatic impact. Here is the rewritten and enhanced version. Maya stepped into the aisle just as one of the flight attendants approached her, hesitating before asking the question that had clearly been gnawing at her. Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, why were you in coach? Why didn't you say something earlier? Why didn't you identify yourself when you boarded? Maya gave a soft, almost apologetic smile. Because I'm not a commercial pilot anymore, she said. Haven't been for 7 years. I'm just a consultant now. I was on my way to visit my daughter at Berkeley. I was just another passenger. Until the moment you needed me not to be. Before the attendant could answer, the forward cabin door opened. A wave of officialdom swept aboard, FOS inspectors with crisp notebooks, airline representatives murmuring into headsets, airport security ensuring everything remained under control. The captain rose to meet the first of them, but paused long enough to take Maya's hand in both of his, shaking it with a sincerity that needed no explanation. The FAA is going to want a very long conversation with you, he said, a tired smile touching the corners of his mouth. The airline too, and probably every aviation news outlet in the country once this gets out. I know, Maya replied. I've done my share of debriefs, just never under circumstances like these. She exhaled. But first, I need to call my daughter and let her know I'm going to be late for dinner. As she moved toward the exit, passengers began to recognize her, their savior revealed not by uniform, but by whispers spreading through the cabin like sparks. Catching dry grass. The teenage boy who had been texting what he thought were his last words stared at her, with tears streaking down his cheeks. His phone hung forgotten in his hand. The elderly woman with the rosary beads reached out and touched Maya's sleeve, whispering blessings in Spanish words Maya didn't entirely understand, but felt deeply. The businessman who had threatened lawsuits earlier simply extended a trembling hand, unable to articulate the gratitude on his face. A young mother cradling a sleeping infant mouthed thank you with such raw, overwhelming relief that Maya had to look away before her composure cracked. Jennifer stood by the exit, her professional mask fissured by emotion. The passengers. They're saying you saved them, she said quietly. They're calling you a miracle. A pilot who appeared out of nowhere exactly when they needed you. Maya shook her head. I'm not a miracle. I just had the right experience at the right moment. That's probability, not magic. But even as she said it, a question settled in the back of her mind. What were the odds? What were the chances that on this exact flight, in this exact emergency, there would be someone who had not only faced the scenario before, but had pioneered the procedures that allowed them to survive it? The debriefing stretched late into the night. FAA investigators dissected every detail, her background, her credentials, the decisions she made, the technique she used, the optimization she suggested. The captain and first officer backed her at every step, their exhaustion unable to dim their respect for her. The airline CEO arrived within hours, flanked by executives and lawyers. His gratitude was overwhelming: lifetime flight benefits, consulting offers, compensation packages that made Maya blink. She declined almost all of it, accepting only a commitment that the airline would adopt her updated, zero-fuel emergency training protocols. Then came the media-hungry cameras. Urgent questions, the story of the invisible expert who'd saved 161 lives. Maya issued a short statement and refused further interviews. Fame had never interested her. Getting home did, but the moment that stayed with her came 3 days later, when she met Captain Marcus Chin at a quiet Portland cafe. Away from the chaos, they sat across from each other, two pilots linked by something only they understood. I've been replaying everything that happened up there, Marcus said, staring into his coffee. And those 4 words you said. I've done this before. It hit me later. You meant it literally. 14 times. While we were living it for the first time. Maya nodded. Every emergency is someone's first time. That's what's been bothering me, Marcus continued. Test pilots like you, you're the ones who go first. You find out what works and what gets people killed. You write the procedures the rest of us depend on. You take the risk so that when the impossible happens, we have a fighting chance. Maya sat still for a long moment. She had lived the truth of what he said, but she had never heard it articulated so plainly. I never thought about it that way, she admitted. It was just the job. It was never just the job, Marcus said, meeting her eyes. Every technique you told me to use, someone had to prove it. Someone had to survive it first. You did that 14 times so that I could do it once. And walk away with everyone alive. We all walked away, Maya said softly. That's the only thing that matters. Marcus managed a weary smile. Call me Marcus. And there's something else you should know. That flight changed how I see everyone sitting in my cabin. You looked like any other passenger middle seat. Coach, jeans, and a sweatshirt. Nothing special. Nothing that said you had an extraordinary background. But you did. And I had no idea until the moment we needed you. It's true for more people than you think, Maya said. Someone on board could be a trauma surgeon. Another could be a combat veteran. A crisis negotiator. An engineer. An astronaut. We never really know who we're sitting next to until life forces them to show us. Marcus nodded slowly. I used to walk down the aisle and see passengers, just people to transport. Now I see stories I don't know. Skills I'll never guess. Expertise that might never be needed, but could save lives if it ever is. 2 weeks later, the investigation findings came out. They were harsh, but fixable fuel system failures, false sensor readings, maintenance shortcuts that should never have aligned into catastrophe. The airline overhauled inspections. Boeing issued service bulletins. The FAA updated training, now including the very techniques Maya had created years earlier. And Maya? She faded back into her quiet life, into the background of an aviation world she had once lived and breathed. But inside, something had shifted. The 161 passengers changed too. The teenage boy who had written goodbye messages grew up to become an aerospace engineer, dedicating his career to emergency landing research. He kept a faded newspaper clipping about Maya pinned above every desk he ever worked at. The elderly woman with the rosary beads mailed Maya a letter every year, thanking her for grandchildren she lived to meet, sunsets she lived to see, years she lived to cherish. Maya kept everyone in a small wooden box. Marcus kept her business card tucked in his flight case, a reminder that asking for help isn't weakness, but the kind of strength that saves people. And Maya herself rediscovered something. She had lost the day she left test flying, the assurance that her dangerous work had mattered, sometimes. Late at night, those 4 words echoed in her mind. I've done this before. 4 simple words, weighted with experience and fear and hard-earned confidence. Words that transformed panic into order. Words that saved lives. She thought of herself in seat 23 key anonymous. Unremarkable, invisible, carrying knowledge no one else on that aircraft had. Knowledge forged through 14 zero-fuel landings. In daylight and darkness, in storms and still air. Under conditions designed to push aircraft and pilot to the breaking point. And then came the 15th time. The one that wasn't a test. The one where lives, not data, were on the line. The world eventually moved on. News cycles shifted. Interviews stopped. The story became a footnote in aviation textbooks. A remarkable coincidence. A statistical anomaly. A saved flight attributed to the expertise of an unexpected passenger. But the meaning endured. Sitting in her daughter's apartment weeks later, listening to the rain tapping softly against the window. Just like that day, Maya finally allowed herself to feel something she had suppressed during the crisis. Pride, relief, gratitude, and the quiet certainty that everything she had ever done had led to that moment, somewhere across dozens of cities. 161 people were alive, sleeping in their own beds, holding their families, living the futures they nearly lost. They would carry the memory forever, the terror, the silence, the voice that said 4 calm words that shifted destiny. I've done this before. And Maya Rodriguez, the invisible expert in seat 23 key closed her eyes and finally rested, because sometimes the most extraordinary person on a flight is the one no one notices until the world needs them.